Welcome again to the Exit Strategy Podcast. And you've got Gavin Dom here today. This is the seventh episode. Gav's the one who remembers our anniversary. I don't. I'm that guy in the relationship. Yeah, so we were kind of musing at the beginning of this, talking about all these AI apps, right? All these products that are out there, the content generators and the video snippet, things, and just how these tools are just proliferating like crazy. I don't know about you, Gab, but I follow a couple of these like newsletters that I get in my email inbox, and they've got like, and it's daily. It's like 10, 15, 20 new tools. Like, I was going today and I was looking for something to make characters for this one project, right? That you could feed information into, and then the character will talk a certain way, whatever. You could do famous people, you could do your own originals. And I found this one, it was character.ai. I was like, oh, cool, that looks cool. And then I was like, saw a list that I found, was this one website, and there were like five. It's like, oh, this is perfect. And then I'm like, well, let me look at one more. Oh, this is even better. like you keep going, and it's almost like you really like this one, and it like does the job and it's cool, but then you look at another one and it does even other stuff you hadn't even thought of. So, it's really hard to keep track of, and it feels like there's a ton of this already, but I think at the same time, we're still talking like wide open field, right? I mean, we've only scratched the surface. Nobody has any idea yet, in my opinion, what even the current AI language models can do or be applied to what the use cases are. Yeah, I think we got you on mute, buddy. There it
A little
is.
bit, yeah, a little bit is it's like the early blockchain Web3 days. Maybe we're going to go through this cycle of people are throwing out crazy ideas and a lot of it falls flat. The difference, I think, with AI, and this is what occurred to me in the past just week, besides Chat GPT, which is cool, it's helpful. I've got use out of it, but I'm now using one app. um, I'm using a few apps that do a bit of AI stuff, like machine learning and audio management and clever stuff. But there's one app for video editing into snippets. Just it intelligently goes through the video upload and will suggest, based on the transcripts, short video segments based on the time limit that I set, 30 seconds, 60 seconds, 90 seconds, whatever. And it adds captions, and it gives me a rating score of how much energy or buzz or keyword relevance it is. It's so simple and it's so needed, and now it's so automated. And
Mhm.
it might not be perfect yet, but it's pretty darn good already. And we're only in the beginning. Like I think I said yesterday, that looking at keyword research volume, you suddenly see AI marketing just take off from zero in June of this year. We are definitely entering this AI craze. And it's really interesting to think, like, I guess I'm thinking we're going to think of the obvious things first.
Mhm.
Startups are going to happen. They're going to like become the gorilla in the room for certain product categories. And we're going to say, oh yeah, that tool for that particular use case. But then we're going to get clever. Then we're going to start competing and saying, how do we differentiate? How do we add depth of dimension here? How do we make these language models all the more sophisticated, automatically drawing in connections with oracles of Chainlink, with connecting with blockchains and pulling in the different data sources. And we're going to really see something just truly, truly remarkable. Pretty exciting. So it opened my eyes. I just realized there's a ton of new opportunity that's opening up right now.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I've kind of been really deep in it. I've gotten into the prompt engineering and just really learning how to talk to it and figure out how to get the most out of AI, ChatGPT specifically, but also using a bunch of other AI tools. I mean, I think the one thing was straight away, it's been useful for a couple things, like, and it's very productive, right? Like the content creation, for example. Even if you don't really know what you're doing with ChatGPT, you can still go in and say, "Hey, I want a 500-word blog post about AI and how it's, a big fad right now and blah, blah, blah. And you're going to get something decent. You're going to get a draft, in a few seconds, really. And then there you go. You could take that. You could, it won't be perfect, but you could edit it, blah, blah, blah. And you could throw that up on your website, just minutes, right? Really decent content. If you know a little bit more and you can put together a good prompt, you can crank out long form blog posts, 2,500, 3,000 word blog posts that are really well done, including like, links to research and the whole nine, right? So there's that side of it. There's the image generation. Obviously, people are doing a lot with that, a lot of art, a lot of, branding and different things going on there. You've got the instant website generators that are doing some of that too. So there's lots of stuff, and I think, like you're saying, the low hanging fruit's kind of getting gobbled up, but I still think there's a lot of nuance and subtlety that can be done within even some of those general categories, say like AI website builder, because there's lots of different types of websites. And what I'm finding with AI is the more specific you get, the better. Right? It's actually not as good as a generalist. That's where it's kind of meh. It's like, okay, it's average. But when you get specific and you have a specific use case and you can give it very specific, give the model specific instructions, I feel like it really starts to shine to the point of even doing a little bit of its own innovating. Like I built this business plan prompt and just for the hell of it, at the end of the prompt, when it gives this like, decent little business plan, it's a business plan, but it's kind of like an overview. I just decided to write continue again. Then it went and did like a competitor analysis and it just started like spitting stuff out, it was kind of neat. But so let's say somebody's sitting here right now and they're going, all right, man, I get it. Right. AI, it's cool stuff. Like, how do I get into it? I want to build something. I want to build an AI product. I'm ready. I'm a developer or I have developers or whatever you want to do. I'm going to pay people. How would you recommend someone go through the process of trying to figure this out? Right. Because, I think earlier today we were talking about product and the entrepreneurial journey, right? Like, how do you go about
Yeah.
it? How do you choose?
Yeah, I can pull that. I got that image up that we can refer to. Pretty fun. Back in my mind, I'm thinking AI at the same time as it's this, it's got full of promise, 100%. It's very usable now. And it's going to be the case that a lot of people, and you've made this point to me a bunch of times, it's like you can have AI, you can have ChatGPT prompts, and then you can have ChatGPT prompts, right? The
Right.
quality, the difference of quality, mm, like I've seen some brands using content that I know is obviously done by a basic AI
Hmm.
prompt, and it sucks. It's like I don't know how to explain it. It's like robotic English. It
Hmm.
just and you just know it's like the structure because when you've been doing ChatGPT for a while,
Hmm.
you start and you have basic prompts. I stay most of the stuff. I'm just like trying to bash out ideas, do some research, brainstorming.
Hmm.
So my prompts are relatively simple, and then I start to see okay, it's kind of like talks in the same tone of voice, and then I see that show up on brands that should be doing a much better job with their work, and it's embarrassing, and it will be increasingly embarrassing. So I think the depth of quality of how they approach the use of the AIs is also going to be a big factor. Part of it is the sophistication of the prompt, but if you have an amazing prompt, but it's relying on a limited language model,
Hmm.
then you're still going to get garbage in, garbage out kind
Yep.
of scenario, right? So it's the whole package that has to be that. And then you have to have, like you said, the generalist, you have to have the commercial awareness or the experience or the depth of subject expertise, relevance to the market audience. There's still a lot of human stuff that has to happen. And so we're just going to see what that journey is. Any reflections now? I'll share this fun little diagram and talk through a bit of product stuff.
Yeah, no, no, no. I want to get to this because this is really important about, the difference between a kind of build it and they will come principle, which I think Web3 is just notoriously done for a decade now, thinking they've got this incredibly cool technology and, they just need to build it and everybody's going to love it and, it's going to blow up, but they don't have any use cases. They don't even know how to use it. Right. So, yeah. Anyway, no. Let's get into this. This is a really good one.
So this came up in a meeting earlier today that made it very relevant. So I fired it off pretty punchy, I think. And let's just see if I can give a bit more reflection here. But there's two approaches to product management or product development, let's say. One is the one that most entrepreneurs pursue, and it happens to be the wrong thing. And the startup fails because, as the top line in the diagram here shows, they've pursued building a Ferrari sports car, and they don't have the experience, the engineering talent, the facilities, the budget that's required, the resourcing, the training and development, the people to pull that off yet. So what they do is, well, they think, all right, we're building the Ferrari sports car, and what we're able to build today, let's build the wheel.
Mhm.
Then let's build the base of the wheel, the chassis. Then let's build the frame, and then let's try the engineering, the electrics. Along that journey, they don't realize how long it's going to take to do anything that is competent. And in that process, their burn rate, the amount of money that they spend on people, is astronomical compared to what they've got in the treasury, in the fund, in the bank account. And they're not learning enough because it's going to take them a hell of a long time to release this Ferrari sports car, by which point they have had no real testing. They've had no real validation. They haven't had customer feedback. They've just pursued this thing. They've kept it under wraps. They're building in what's called in stealth, right? They're building in stealth. A
Yep.
lot of startups talk about that. And so what they release is, well, it doesn't sell. No one wants it. They've already got a Ferrari sports car. It's called a Ferrari sports car. This rip-off sports brand that they thought they were going to be so amazing, that it's not competitive. They didn't learn. And there are use cases for this in the car industry, in every industry, and a whole bunch of startups that I've worked with over the 10, 15 years. What product leaders, what real experienced product leaders and second-time entrepreneurs, it's funny, you don't learn the first time, and
Mm-mm.
a lot of them do learn the mistakes the second time around. And the first time, they're not very good at listening. They don't hear it. So the people who have got that commercial experience, they'll say, okay, although we want to build a Ferrari sports car or something competitive to that, we're not going to start there. We're going to start with the MVP. And the MVP is minimum viable product. And viability means commercial viability. And so if they know that over the next space of like 6 months or a year or two, depends on the level of funding to an extent, the
Mhm.
support, etc. But if they don't reliably have the funds to build a Ferrari sports car in the next, like comfortably within their budget, then they shouldn't try.
Mm-mm.
But what they might get away with is building a skateboard. So the
Right.
MVP is nothing, almost nothing, compared to what they actually ideally want to build towards in the future. But they know they've got the intelligence, the wherewithal, the commercial savviness, and the bruises and the scars tissue to know that you shouldn't start off trying to actually build the ideal, the whole product, the complete thing that you want to build in the future.
Mm-mm.
You have to pick something that is a little slice of the pie that you can actually experiment with, do customer validation, interviews, develop your processes, develop your team, your manufacturing capabilities, whatever it is, your critical success factors, and start with something relatively simple. And that's the analogy here of the skateboard. And once you've mastered the skateboard, you've learned to list it, sell it through whatever, the e-commerce or whatever. You can then move on to the next more sophisticated thing, because you're learning some engineering, you're learning about business supply chains, you're learning the stuff, and then you go and build a scooter. And from a scooter, you can do a bicycle. And from a bicycle, you can do a motorbike. And then from a motorbike, then you can do the car, and then you got your equivalent of the Ferrari motor car. So it's not what people want to build. They don't
Mhm.
want to build the basic skateboard MVP in their grandiose vision of what they want to do. But as I've just tried to outline, um, a lot of startups will fail by trying to build the futuristic thing now before they've developed the capabilities, the skill sets, the processes, and the treasury, the funding required. We always underestimate how long it's going to take to build the wonderful thing. So start more where you are, do something that is within the realm of relative ease, and learn from that, build success on success, and and become more sophisticated over time. So that's the analogy.
Yep. No, that makes perfect sense to me. I think another big part of that, as we were talking about, is time to market, right? It's that skateboard, you get it out quick. You know, you're market testing because what is underneath all this? What's underneath this is transport, right? That's kind of what we're into here. That's the major category. It's like, okay, we want to do something with transportation. We want an innovation here. And yeah, we'd love to build a Tesla competitor, say, right? But we don't know that much about it. We have some ideas. We have one engineer who's, kind of educated in that subject, but it's really just a bit of a passion project. We're real environmentalists, so on and so forth. And you can build an electric skateboard, and you could start there because you are going to learn about batteries, right? And charging, and what that's like, and how does distance, operating distance matter to people, and what kind of pitfalls do they run into when the skateboard runs out of batteries, and is selling second batteries a good idea? I mean, so on and so forth. But a lot of stuff, as much as it seems like it might not be relevant, it is, because it's going to be an individual using a piece of equipment to move that's electric powered, right? Sure. Is it going to be anywhere near the engineering marvel that a Tesla is on a skateboard? Absolutely not. You probably, but I actually have looked into this before because I've skateboarded my whole life and I kind of thought they looked cool. You could do this with off the shelf parts though. I mean, you could have one of these running in a weekend. You could just test the market and say, wow, what is this market like? What are people into? So on and so forth. You could even start doing some design testing, even, playing with different colors and graphics and so on. But then, as you're saying, right? Okay, we move up, we go scooter, we've seen all these electric scooters on the market. Let's kind of see what that looks like. Or you might jump to the bike. That may make sense. It's not like this is a linear thing here, but it's about the progression, right? And it's eventually getting to we'll call it a street ready vehicle that can be driven on major roads that a human being can get around on, you know? And you might end up building an amazing motorcycle, and that's where you go, right? It starts to take off, or I don't know, the scooter that you develop is just better than anything else out there. I mean, it's easy to get caught up in one thing. That's the thing you had in mind. That's the original inspiring moment of, "Oh my god, we're gonna change the way that people, you know, transport themselves around the planet." But even if it turns out that the the thing that you're passionate about is these electric vehicles, it's just what drives you, it's what gets you out of bed in the morning, then build the electric bike startup, sell the damn thing, and then start again, right? Like, but, don't just decide ahead of time that there's only one way to get there. I think that's the real lesson.
Yeah, part of it as well is the developing the culture of your startup and protecting people, protecting relationships. If you pitch them or if you pitch them towards building something difficult that's going to take a long time, there's going to be a lot of friction. There's going
Mm.
to be a lot of twiddling thumbs and waiting and building up the stress of the expectation of what's going to happen in the future. Like if you have a super duper car engineer, like he's got some next level battery engineering chops, and you say build us a wooden skateboard, he might not be too enthusiastic. But like you suggested, maybe do some kind of an electric skateboard. And that might be fun for 3 months for a person who's going to be focused on cars. It's like a team building exercise. Your MVP is like a team building exercise. You get to know each other, you develop your processes, you have a bit of fun, you achieve something that becomes a success. And
Yeah.
it's easier to make something successful that is easier, less resource intensive, less complicated, less challenges or engineering challenges, whatever, to solve something that's a little bit adjacent to the bigger picture. You get that under your wings and you feel better. You got some, maybe you've even got revenue because the
Mhm.
skateboard's selling so well. And then you move on and you take that cohesive culture and then you progress along that roadmap of vision. So there's a lot that you can benefit from by approaching an MVP in an authentic way.
Well,
Minimum
go ahead.
viable.
Yeah, I
Yeah, go.
think what you're onto there too is the idea of how do you even know if this team, I mean, unless it's a veteran team that's already done things together, but if it's a new team, how do you even know you can accomplish something, right? Can this group of people coordinate in a meaningful way, relatively efficiently to do something? I mean, you kind of want to know that really early so that it does give you a lot of information about yourselves, right? And it does give you that win. But, I think of it as like when you do the opposite, and we've both been there, where a product is supposed to launch and it's just dragging, month after month after month are passing by. This happens Web3 all the time. I mean, God, it's probably 80% of the projects this happens to. It's like, I don't know if you've ever been in the construction or remodeled a home, but I've done this a couple times in my younger years. At the end of a house, the worst part of the house is the punch list. You've done all the hard work. You've done the framing and the drywall and the electric and all the stuff, right? And the moldings and the floors. But it's always like, as you're going, there's little things. Oh, I didn't quite get that crown molding right. But you're not gonna hold up production because the electric guys, whatever. And at the end of the thing, you gotta walk around and go, okay, I gotta fix that and that and that and that. Bunch of little things. Takes a weeks, a month sometimes. It's insane. It's all this little nitpicky stuff that you got to get done. Now, in this instance, you got to kind of make that call. Is this rental? Are you flipping it? Are you selling it? Are you a contractor? Right? If you're a contractor and you're working for somebody, you almost have to get it done because of your quality of work. But there's a similar situation. Is it a rental? If you're just a perfectionist, what are you doing? Why are you fixing that tiny little crown molding in the corner? It's that much off, like maybe it's just a hard cut. The house is a little old. It's sagging. You've cut it 16 times. Like, come on, man. It's not worth it, right? You could have rented the thing a month ago, paid somebody to come in and fix it. Like, so you cannot let yourself get caught in that trap. Get something out, iterate. Everybody expects that now too. I think, would this advice have held as well 25, 30 years ago? Maybe not, right? The old engineering was you spec'd it out, the product teams got together. I mean, they'd spend months just coming up with the design and the engineering specs and the code that they want to use and so on and so forth. And my understanding was, they built the entire thing basically before they iterated all. It was like, you did all the work. We're going to go all the way to the end product, launch it, and then go from there. Whereas now it's that, it's ship and iterate, ship and iterate, ship and iterate. And I just think there's something, man, that happens to us all. We've all been there. I'm going to put my hand up where it's like you just can't let go of that baby or something. I don't know. What do you think that is? Because that's important. So why do you think people do this, right? People aren't just sinking themselves on purpose. What have you found over the years that ends up holding people back in this situation from just going for
Well, the obvious the obvious ones is perfectionism and
it? Yeah.
analysis paralysis. I think we mentioned that the other day. There's also there's a lot of personality and even trauma type stuff. You'd be surprised. We're like, I say that men are like hairy children in a lot of
Mhm.
ways. We haven't necessarily grown up We're still just as juvenile and immature in a lot of ways. We just have more responsibility. We have the car keys, but it doesn't mean that we're like. So I think people carry their neuroses and their traumas and their
Mm.
defects into their entrepreneurism in a lot of ways. It's kind of funny. And you need a supportive team to be able to move past a lot of those areas. Yeah, there's just a long list of ways to bash entrepreneurs. The control freaks, they wanna be the one to be like, that was my idea and I had the idea first, and we're gonna
Mhm.
do my idea and it's gonna take us all this time. Um, I think genuinely what I've observed is that there's just a lack of commercial experience.
Right.
It's funny. It's funny. I think what made a big difference for me in my marketing career early on was that I started off with selling stuff. It wasn't brand marketing. I didn't go in there and say, okay, I need to do a fancy strategy with design and tone of voice and like all of the complex things. The essence of marketing was, can you sell the product? And so in the early days, I was doing sales copywriting, direct response advertising, email autoresponders, and A/B split tests. And
Mm.
when you have that level of granular, in your face commercial experience, are you making sales? Have you been in a situation to see sales happening and see what makes the difference, a simple split test or a complicated split test? A lot of entrepreneurs come from an MBA, or they come from a unrelated area, like they're a science engineer or whatever, and then they get into entrepreneurism, but they haven't had that in your face, up against the nose to the grindstone. Are you making sales experience of a marketer? Maybe that's my bias, but that's my perspective. That's what I think a lot of entrepreneurs lack. Can they get it? Probably relatively quickly. And maybe that comes back to this skateboard idea. It's like, give yourself the opportunity to go through the motion of making sales, build something easy, try and figure out what is easy instead of assuming and hoping and making the idealist vision that if you make this bells and whistles Ferrari sports car, then surely people are gonna want it. Like the analogy, what is it? Everyone will beat a path to you, or to build it and they will come.
Mhm.
It's a superficial fantasy that comes, I think, a lot from lack of commercial awareness and experience.
Or it's also just kind of the idea of the Hail Mary, right? It's like the Steve Jobs fantasy. Well, people don't know they need this yet. But when we know we've got this vision, and once people see it, right, they're gonna go crazy for it. It's like, I mean, maybe, but that's extremely rare to be able to be the kind of entrepreneur that has the vision to build products that people don't know they need yet. But even
Yeah, like,
if you think about it, there were always fundamentals. He knew the problem he was solving, in a sense, right? He knew that, for example, anybody, like, it wasn't a leap to think about the iPod. I always use that. Anybody would love to have all the music they own available anytime. That's a no brainer. Why wouldn't you? As long as it wasn't extraordinarily expensive or cumbersome in some way, who wants to lug their CD collection around with you? That's what you did back then. Those were your options. You got, carry, I remember cars having 100 CD changers. That was like a nice piece of equipment for a high end stereo system. I had a buddy who had one. It's like, to get all his music. But, so there was something there. He was fundamental, right? He wasn't like pulling something out of thin air. But a couple of things too that you touched on, I don't want to forget about it. I wrote it down because I think we should get into this another time. But the entrepreneur's journey is your journey as a human being. There's no getting around it. The freaking project's going to go as far as you're willing to go. If you are not willing to change at all, you're probably not going far, because that's what this thing is. It's just, it always ends up that way. There's always going to be that moment where you have to become a better person somehow. a better leader, a better listener, a better communicator. I don't know. The various elements we all go through in the journey of self awareness, self development. You know, the real stuff, right? This is the real personal development. Not the sort of self help, tell yourself how great you are in the mirror bullshit, like the bloody work where you've got to go in there and, like you said, face that trauma, face those fears, face those, irrational beliefs that you have about yourself or the world, and persevere and get through them. Because when you make that breakthrough, the company makes the breakthrough. It's if you're a leader, right? I mean, we're talking about founders here, right? We're not talking about, you're the administrative assistant to the third, marketing lead. Okay, God bless you. You're awesome. And we know you're cutting your teeth and you're going to be a real stud someday. But that person's journey is not quite as fundamental to the journey of the business. It is about that. It's seeing that the development of the product has a lot to do with your development. And if you're not growing and evolving, your company probably isn't either. But then there's this other thing I think that is only something that's happened in the last, again, 20 to 30 years. And I'll call it the Hollywood phenomenon, right? I went to school in Los Angeles. I went to a college out there. When I went out there, I had no designs on acting. I was just a kid from New Hampshire who wanted to go as far away from home as possible and warm, right? LA sounded amazing. It was. So I did. But when I got there, I realized that, a lot of the people that are going to the school I went to and that I hung out with, they were there for Hollywood in some capacity. They wanted to act, write, direct, whatever, be a key grip, right? They left the movies. And what I realized about Hollywood and why it's such a shit show is there's no elimination rounds. All it takes, the only friction is, can you move to LA? Because that's it. You move to LA and you call yourself a writer. You're done. You move to LA, you call yourself an actress. Doesn't matter if you're serving coffee at Starbucks. But what that does is it places a lot of people in one spot competing for very few openings. And there's no funnel. The funnel is the intern at the studio head's desk who quickly glances at 100 scripts a day, throws away 95, takes the other 5, reads them a little deeper, throws away 3, and comes up with 2. But what does it become? It becomes a who you know business. That's the reality. There's tons of incredibly talented people who never see a screen, who never end up, getting their screenplays, made because of that. I think that happened in tech too. People just think they can build software because of the tech boom and because of, the wild successes of Web 2, right? And now Web 3 is the same thing. There's no barrier to entry to calling yourself an entrepreneur these days. You can create a company for $200. That's it. Now I'm an entrepreneur. What are you doing? Well, I'm building a Web 3 startup. Like, that's a lot that's what's happened. And I think people who might have been in other industries, and sure, maybe they've seen the sausage made, but they were building more of a physical product. They were a bike company or a construction materials company, or sold heavy equipment. That is not the same as building software, right? That is not the same as building bleeding edge software. It is a totally different animal.
A lot of stuff there. Steve Jobs imposter syndrome. You also made me aware. Another factor I'd lay the blame of failures is not networking enough,
Mm.
not having a big enough, strong enough network, not being open enough.
Mm-hmm.
It's like the horse blinkers. Some founders, I've been very guilty of this times in the past for sure. Others, I see it a lot, is just people wear the horse blinkers. They think, I'm going to put my head down. I'm going to build what I think is going to be good. And they limit their access to opportunity. A lot of the success that does happen, I agree. I've never had that Hollywood experience. I've not ever been to LA or California. um, but um, but yeah, people need access, and part of the responsibility of an entrepreneur is networking. 100%, picking people's brain, being of service to other people, helping them out, making the ask, asking for connections, asking for advice, asking for feedback, um, being part of those conversations, absorbing the perspective and the attitudes and experiences from other people. Part of it is reading, but reading gets you so far. Part of it's the personality, events, conferences, and things. It's not a waste of time. It might become a waste of time if you're at the bar drinking, cocktails, until 3 o'clock in the morning. I think you shared a great idea. Was it you? I think so. Go to conferences and hire a room and have meetings in your hotel room. Don't go to the conference and watch the presentations, because you can
Mm.
watch that on YouTube at 2x speed and get all of the information you want. But the real thing is the networking, and the best way to do that is outside of the conference room. So
Absolutely.
networking big on the list.
For sure. And I think too, in that process of being willing to listen and keeping your ears open, what I saw in Hollywood is there were two types of ways to succeed. There were those who just made it. They got the break, they had the talent, they became actors, actresses, or screenwriters, or whatever. But there were other people who did equally as well. And here's what happened: they were willing to pivot. They were out there, let's say as an actor, trying to get those gigs, and they met somebody, and that person, they needed a job, at the time, because they weren't getting any acting gigs. And they said, "Listen, well, why don't you come on? You're a good communicator, you're a good looking guy or whatever. Come on, we need an assistant to my boss, right?" And then that person goes over there and they end up using their acting skills, and maybe not on stage, but their ability to communicate and project and all of that. Next thing you know, they're an executive at a studio, right? Or another
Yeah.
company. I mean, they still got it, right? But why? Because they said, okay, this is what's in front of me right now. This is what I can do. I can still go in my auditions in my spare time and try to pursue that dream, but I'm not going to just ignore the fact that this might be for me. This might be the only opportunity I'm really going to have in this business is in the back office. But if I love the movies, you're still in Hollywood, baby,
That's
right?
I think CEOs maybe take too much of the glory. In actual fact, success is not just down to the CEO. They need to be able to put together a good team, and sometimes they get lucky with the team.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and part of it is how well they listen. There's an idea of hiring up,
Yeah.
hiring people that are better than you. And that's how I approach when I build a big marketing team. I'm not looking for the people that I feel I can comfortably control and manage and direct and tell them what to do. I'm looking for the people that are competent enough or passionate enough or curious enough to be able to challenge me with my view on what they should do in their function, like social or paid advertising, performance and product analytics and whatever it is. I want that pushback and challenge from them,
Mm-hmm.
because that makes life easier for me. So I want to find people that are better than me in their specialist areas. And I think a lot entrepreneurs don't necessarily think of it in that sense. They think, I need to hire a team who I can control and tell what to do. That time has passed. Which reminds me, back to your previous idea of in years past, called traditionally the waterfall method or the project management. They'd scope the entire project, and that would certainly come from an engineering, a physical pre-computer days. Then when the computer days came along and then projects started to become software projects, that's where the inefficiency of saying, okay, this is what we're going to build and it's going to take us 2 years to build it, and then we'll see if it works or not.
Mm-hmm.
That's when agile methodology was discovered, and saying, no, 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 we're not going to do the waterfall approach with project management because we might be over budget, even if we have the quality, etc. We're going to chop it up into the MVP versions. Then you become agile. And so there was a transition from physical construction engineering perspective, where if you're building a skyscraper, you do need to know where every single
Sure.
bit
Sure.
is going to go before you break ground, right? If you're
Sure.
building software, you can always change the code. So it's better to iterate and learn as you go.
And of course, because I don't want we're not at the stage where we get a lot of comments yet, but maybe someday. I don't want people to be like, yeah, but you can't just ship everything. What about like an electronic medical record system or no shit? I mean, if you're dealing with financials, it's gonna be different. You can't just ship garbage. That's not what we're talking about. But even then, you could still get stuff out to test audiences, right? You could bring in, alpha testers, just get it in front of people, I think is the number one thing. Sure, getting to market, wonderful. There's a lot of good benefits to that, especially being income. You really don't know what people think until they're paying for it. That's a kind of an old adage that turns out to be quite true most of the time. But even somebody who's, testing your product will give you relatively decent advice, they may not give you the best advice on whether or not they'd really pay for it, because they're not in that position per se, but they could probably give you a range. But still, it's just if you're doing it like it's this little workshop, and it's this little like closed cell, that's usually where the problems are.
I'll give a real quick example on that kind of scenario, the medical, whatever you said. If it's
Electronic medical records.
yeah, hospital software, whatever. If the current incumbent that the hospital was use, if you think that's what you want to replace, see if there's an opportunity to produce a plugin that integrates with that software that
Ah,
solves a real problem for the doctors or whatever. Is
right.
like understand their context, understand what they're not providing, and see if you can fill a little gap that will give you that learning curve. That will be your skateboard, your MVP, and you'll be in the world in that universe, and you'll be able to learn by having something real that is being used, while in the background then you're building out the full replacement for those kind of systems. So again, just a little possibility, an idea of how to think around the problem, that that you can build something small that has an impact you can learn from as you're approaching the bigger picture.
Yeah, no, no, that's good advice, and that's clever to be creative with that. All right. Well, what do you think? I think we beat this one up pretty good. Get to market, folks. Get it out there. Don't don't be too precious about your stuff. Open your ears. It's a process, but it's a process of evolution. Just like this. Are we doing better? What do you think? What's our midterm grade here on episode 7?
I think so. We don't have any like swooshes or color, like we don't have any
No special effects.
sound special effects. Maybe we
Notes.
need some of that
I
somehow.
did do a background today. That's an upgrade. I don't know. People like
That's
it.
true.
Plants.
That's true.
I just wanted to match Gab's fake background.
Yeah, not quite as many plants as I've got, but you got some plants in there.
I couldn't get that background. It's custom. It's behind the
I'll give
paywall.
you. I'll tell you what I do. I'll give you a screenshot of my
Yeah.
background, and you can put it on yours. And
There
then
we go. We can do that. All right. I'm going to hold you to that.